Okay, we are here on what would be the 100th birthday of John F. Kennedy, and we are here with Joe Paolella, one of his Secret Service agents. What's it like for a kid from Chicago to be working as a Secret Service agent, and now you're working for President Kennedy? Tell me what your feelings were the first time you saw him.
Thank goodness, before I was officially transferred, I had been with President Eisenhower, Nixon a little bit, and got to know, got the feel of the different presidents. But deep down, I still had to, and this took a lot of strength on my part, to restrain myself from, acting, foolish. I had to give the impression of self-confidence, and whatever happened, I'd be able to take care of it, or, for the president. So I did my level best to appear competent, respectful, but not to the point where I was immobilized by his presence. So that's basically what it was. Deep down, I thought it was wonderful to be by the president, and as people always ask, would you give your life for the president? And I said then, I said now, yeah, that was my job. When I was in the Marines, I knew there was always a chance of getting killed. I think deep down you always think that if you did get shot or anything, you'd probably be wounded and you probably wouldn't die. But if that happened, so be it. And I never met an agent that didn't feel the same way.
Let me ask you this. You said you had to project confidence, that you would be there for any need that the president needed and be of service to him. You could project it, but did you really feel it? Was it just something that you had to stick your chest out and go, I can do this?
I'll tell you, I thought I did, and with the photographs, I mentioned to you that when the White House photographer would take a picture of any of the agents with the president, you'd get a copy of the picture. And looking at the picture, I thought to myself, yeah, I looked okay. I looked like what I was supposed to be there. The tough guy that was taking care of the president.
But inside, I mean, I'm talking about Joe inside.
Oh yeah, no.
You felt that? Do you think most of the Secret Service agents felt that, or that they just projected that they could protect the president?
I would say initially they projected it. I think after a while, you get used to anything, and they knew what their job was, and that was supreme with you. And as I said before, I think we felt trained enough that if there was anybody who tried to get the president, we would get him first, the bad guy first, before they would be able to shoot the president or us.
Okay, I'm going to stop you here for a minute and I'll jump ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, well that's an interesting thing you said, and I think that of course is the job. But they didn't do that on November 22nd, 1963.
Well, that's something that's always been on my mind. And let's look back, and you pretend you're Roy Kellerman, and in the follow-up cars, Paul Landis, McIntyre, Emory Roberts. I think I'm going to sneeze.
That's okay, go ahead.
Clint Hill.
Just you and me here.
Yeah. And there was, you're in a place that you've never been before. It has a certain coming from Chicago, downtown Chicago, when you'd be downtown Chicago with the tall buildings, it felt like you were in a canyon or cavern that you could almost hear an echo if you hollered out because of all the high buildings. So the people who were in the car, Kellerman and Bill Greer, were older guys ready to retire and had been on this tour for many, many years. When they heard the crack, the noise, they did not know number one, they thought it was fireworks, and number two, they didn't know where it was coming from because of the cavernous kind of section they were in. So if you figure it was like 5.7 seconds, me setting this up, talking to you, is probably a lot more than 5.7 seconds. If you had you had a clock, and we were talking, and one of them is driving, the other one's sitting back there. The follow-up guys, same thing. They're wondering where the noise is coming from, whether it's a bullet or not. When they finally saw the first shot hitting President Kennedy, from the time the first shot hit him and the last shot that killed him, it was 5.7 seconds from the first shot and to the last shot. During that 5.7 seconds, could you say, and I would always like to do this, even if you knew the first shot was coming from a back of your window, could you make a move that quickly? Could Kellerman have jumped over or under the paneling or whatever it was that was used to hold the bubble top? He was a big man. There was the McGoverns between him and Kennedy. The person who did the quickest move was Clint, and he got there too late. The president was already dead.
But
so what I'm trying to say is that in that period of time, and I don't know the whole thing, but I think there was one shot, the first shot, and then there was a brief time, then there was two quick shots, making it 3 shots. I would really love if we ever had enough money, even to get some athletes or get some 2 older guys. Emery Roberts was in his 50s. He died 10 years after that. So did Kellerman, 10 or 15 years after that. And Bill Greer. So they were at kind of like the end of their tour of duty, so to speak. But even trained athletes, even if they knew before, I wonder how close they could, how they could do it in 5.7 seconds.
But aren't you trained for those kind of things?
Yeah.
Should they have taken President Kennedy into that route where they had those? This is what you're going to get from people.
Yeah. Oh,
Should they have taken him down that particular route where there were buildings and there, so that you couldn't?
Let me do this. This is very important that I have one of these.
Have one. Have one.
You have to remember, in a way, William, that was the age of innocence. Okay, in the 60s really was, I think, the age of innocence compared to the way things are now. No president had been shot in a car or any You know, we were, you know, practicing for it. It's like football, you know. You could be a really great football player during practice, but not so good during, you know, the actual time.
There are going to be people,
Oh.
and you know this, that say that the Secret Service didn't do their job, and that there were reasons they didn't do their job, that there was dislike for President Kennedy amongst the agents, and that some of them, not all of them, not the whole organization, but some in that circle may have had or ties to having him killed, or just by their inaction let it happen.
If there was any fault, it could be inaction, but we're just speculating. I always keep on thinking of the 5.7 seconds, and somehow or other, and I think it's been done. Some of the books I read that they tried to see if the Secret Service, any of the Secret Service guys, could have.
I know that you've told me previously that being in the Secret Service was the best time of your life. It was the most fulfilling time. And then this event in Dallas happened, and the president lost his life. And there's been speculation now for 53 years. What if this would have happened? What if that guy would have done this? What if that agent would have done this? What if they would have done this? I know that you have a great deal of respect for everyone that you knew on the Secret Service. And I know that you feel that they tried to do their jobs to the best of their ability. You've made that very plain to me. And yet, President Kennedy did not survive. And I know from our talks that you believe that there was some sort of conspiracy.
But not with the agents, let's put it that way. You know, some kind of conspiracy. I mean, the fact that I can't imagine somebody like Oswald doing what he supposedly did. His connections with the mafia, his connection with Ruby, the mafia's connection with the CIA, and the CIA's connection with the Nazi Bund, their private, their Secret Service, whatever you want to call it. They had a different name for it. Galen, you've got some
Gerhard, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
I think it's Gerhard.
Yeah, I get those anyhow. And what I tried to do in the book, William, is present things that I almost like the guy who was kind of a retard. It was a great movie, and he seemed to be wherever things happen. Shit, I can't think of that.
Was it an agent, a reporter?
No, he was like I said, a retarded kid that seemed to be where things were happening.
Oh, you're talking about the movie Forrest Gump.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how I got on that one. Yeah, me. The fact that I had relatives, quite frankly, who had mafia connections. The fact that the FBI had overheard Carlos Marcello, who was the head mafia guy in New Orleans, and Oswald's uncle worked for him, not as a mafia guy, but
numbers runner.
They use non-mafia people to do the dirty work a lot of times. The fact that they tried to get Johnny Roselli, who was a big mafia guy from California, and I think killed a couple other ones, to assassinate Cuba's president.
Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro, right. So that to me sometimes is almost too coincidental. And so that's kind of what motivated me to, being an ex-Marine myself, from what I hear, he couldn't fire a rifle. It took him 2 or 3 times to get through boot camp. You can't get through boot camp unless you get to be at least qualified. Excuse me. I was 18-year-old guy from Chicago, never had anything like a rifle other than a BB gun. Red Ryder, you remember those? Are you too young for the Red Ryder?
A bit before my time, but I know what they are.
Okay. And yet I shot sharpshooter the first time. Had I done it for a while, I was real close to expert. I think to myself, here's a guy that didn't shoot, became a sharpshooter, and a guy like Oswald, who now, I guess we should, when we get a chance, find out if, in fact, it was true that he didn't qualify.
He did qualify at one point, just enough to be called a sharpshooter, but
he was called a sharpshooter.
I don't remember it. He qualified as a sharpshooter, I believe, but it was like the lowest possible that you could get and still make it. His roommate, or his best friend at the time in the Marines, Nelson Delgado, said he was constantly getting gigged for having a dirty rifle, and when he would shoot at the targets, he was constantly getting Maggie's drawers, or red flag.
Yep, it means he missed the whole target.
And after Delgado talked about this to the Warren Commission and to Mark Lane, he then moved to England for 2 or 3 years for fear of being killed. So that would seem to tell you a little something. I hate to keep harping on this, but I have to, because the critics are going to be there. We know that the Secret Service, when the Records Review Board was put together, they sent notification to the Secret Service to protect all their records. And right about that time, when they were ordered to leave things inviolate, they took their trip records for Kennedy in October and November of 1963 and destroyed them. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I would have to kind of figure out how it was destroyed. Was it destroyed in a fire? Was it something that had destroyed other stuff?
I understand that they purposely destroyed those records, calling it routine.
Well, that's wrong. To do anything like that, was wrong. There's no doubt about it.
Does that
I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to know if it was just some fucked up guy that just didn't know what the hell he was doing, and there was a bunch of other stuff that they got rid of. It got rid of it along with other stuff. It was an actual error, or was it planned? And how did you hear about it? Number one, and who was it? Who was it? The Secret Service that did it?
Mm-hmm,
was it government?
No, it was the Secret Service. It's in the records from the Records Review Board. When they asked for these records, and they said, "Well, we've destroyed those," and they were told to hand over what they had and leave it alone. And Right, my understanding is right after they were summoned about this, or right before they just started destroying trip records. So to a person like myself who has studied this for half my life, and I look at the story of Oswald and how he got into the building, how he got the job at the school book depository, the fact that he was in Russia and was able to come back with a Russian wife, all sorts of things go on here, and then we find out that these records have been destroyed. All these things, you would think that if this was a simple case of a man in a building shooting a man in a car, that it wouldn't be that complicated. And yet this is probably the most complicated murder in history. And nothing through the years has converged to make it all come together. It seems to go further apart as the years pass.
Well, has anybody during a Warren Commission or anything tried to find out why this stuff was destroyed? I mean, any...
You mean the Records Review Board?
Yeah.
I'm not sure the excuse they gave, but they did come back. I think they said it was just a matter of routine. I don't have the exact wording in front of me. As a person that has studied this case, you look at this and go, oh, here's one more piece where, and I'm not going to be the only one, that thinks this way. When this information, when you speak, it's going to be, but Joe, they destroyed these records. Don't you find that suspicious?
Oh yeah, of course. But you see a lot of stupid stuff done, not just in this case, but in many other cases. I myself, I did a polygraph test years ago, and for some reason they wanted the polygraph for whatever reason. Well, I didn't have it any longer. I got rid of it myself just because I didn't have enough room to put all the records that I had. You're only supposed to keep them for 3 or 4 years, and this might have been right about 3 or 4 year time.
But he wasn't the president of the United States, was he?
No, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is, and I can't imagine if it was a secret. Do you know when supposedly this happened? How long was it after?
Just as they were, I don't remember the exact date. I don't have any of that in front of me. The board was started, I believe, in '92. I could be wrong on this date, but I think it was '95 that they asked for these records, and they were told they were no longer available. It's just one more piece on top of another piece on top of another piece for people that look at this case and go, this just isn't possible. And I try not to be paranoid when I do this stuff. I thought when I got into this I was going to find answers that were pretty much going to lead me down a path and I would be able to answer the question for myself. What you find, instead of real answers that you can really hold on to, what you find is you're grasping at smoke. Nothing seems to be what it should be. Myself, I've done a lot on the Kennedy autopsy, and you would think that if you could find answers there, if you could find answers anywhere, you could find it there. But you don't find answers. You find that he was given an autopsy by 2 paper pushers that hadn't done an autopsy in years, and they had the best pathology, what's the word I'm looking for? Pathologist. They had the best pathologist in the world standing by waiting for the call to come in and do this autopsy, and the call never came. So, and I have people that say, when we got the body, we think that the body had already been gotten to. Paul O'Connor told me, it was his job that night in the morgue to do the craniotomy, and take the president's brain and put it in formaldehyde and fix it. Paul O'Connor said there was no brain to be removed. And yet we know that in Dallas, Texas, he had a brain in his head. It was, of course, damaged, but there was cerebellum seen at the back of his head. One doctor said it was literally oozing onto the cart. And yet when the body gets to Dallas, we have more than one person, including an FBI agent, saying, well, I didn't see that. The other FBI agent, Frank O'Neill, said, when I questioned him about it, I pushed it just a little too much, and he said, brain, you keep talking about a brain. We're not talking about a brain, we're talking about a wedge of brain, a piece of brain. Well, you know, yet because I'm saying this because they have pictures of almost a whole brain in the National Archives, pictures of it, that is supposedly President Kennedy's brain. And it just isn't possible. Not from the people I've talked to. So it's not only it's the autopsy that I've been studying for 25 years. It's then going back and talking to people like you, witnesses in Dealey Plaza, and then we have little things with the Secret Service. It's been claimed that Emory Roberts ordered agents off the back of the car before they left the airport to go into Dallas, and there's a piece of film there that seems to show him ordering people back off the off the car. I don't want to be overly suspicious. I don't want to think these things. I don't want to be as paranoid as I am, and quite frankly, I wish I didn't know what I know. Did you ever hear of E. Howard Hunt's deathbed confession?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I read. And for some reason, it hasn't been, for whatever reason, it would be interesting to find out the powers that be why they didn't take that seriously.
Do you take it seriously?
You know, I haven't read it that much.
It's on film. You can see it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think.
And was it his kid or something like that? Wasn't his kid?
It was St. John Hunt he talked to. St. John also did the foreword to my last book.
No kid. Oh, great. Yeah.
So let's go for a minute and since this is going to be different from the book.
I mean, if we just get to get back to Hunt, if who did Hunt say did it? I mean,
he said he was a bench warmer for basic for other people. He said Cord Meyer was directly involved.
CIA guy.
Yeah, and there was some.
His wife was screwing Kennedy.
Yeah. Do you know that for a fact?
Sure. Well, I believe so. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
I know you don't like to talk about President Kennedy's peccadillos, for lack of a better word. I will tell you.
To be truthful with it, I don't remember every. They didn't go when they came in. They didn't go by I am Mrs. Blah blah blah.
Right, I understand.
We never know who the hell they were, and the women, pretty soon looked almost alike. He had a certain type he kind of liked, and there was. So they would be brought in by Kennedy's. We used to call them the Irish Mafia. So we never got a name or anything like that. We never had a write down name.
I don't think any less of President Kennedy for those things. I will say this on camera. I will say this off camera. If I were the President of the United States and I was in that position, you would have to probably do me before you could say good morning. But that's just me. So I understand those things. I don't hold that against him at all. I think there's a difference between your personal life, as long as it doesn't involve the country, and your job as being the president. So that doesn't bother me at all. But there are people that want to dwell on that. Some of your co-agents were bothered by it.
Well, let's put it this way. It took me a long time to believe it. I used to hear it, I didn't believe it until I saw it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you like to think of a priest or a religious person as being above the average person. I'd like to think of the president as being above that any of the, you can say, you know, I'm going to kill this SOB. You know, I don't think I think the stretch from not being proud of what he did or happy what he did would lead to killing him, or be part of anything to kill him. And none of those guys that were on, except for McIntyre, me, and you were mentioning that Tony Sherman died. Newman, I haven't been able to get a hold of.
You're talking about Seymour Hersh.
Yep.
And the participation in his book, The Dark Side of Camelot. But in reading The Dark Side of Camelot, and right around the time that book came out, I was asked by Gala Films to contact all of you, which I did.
You contacted me too?
I did. It was some years ago.
Okay.
And I remember you saying to me, you know, I really would like to do something positive, say something good about President Kennedy, do something positive. Because I think there were many good qualities. I think the good qualities, for the most part, outweighed whatever bad, you might say, if you want to use the word bad. I think that I do believe that there were times when, through his own behavior, he could have put this country at risk. But I also believe...
definitely. I mean, if blackmail, or some of the girls might have been spies, I mean, all kinds of shit.
I believe he saved the world, though, during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Good. Well, I believe so too.
I believe if he hadn't been the man at the helm, along with his brother Robert, we probably would not be here now.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And it's a good point about Robert. He was like the hammer. He could make a decision or force Kennedy to make a decision that he normally wouldn't. Kennedy was more like Obama. He was a nice guy. I always said Obama was the perfect peacetime president. I would like a guy like Robert Kennedy to be the warlike president. You know?
Why do you say that?
Because he's tough. He from what I was around on the outskirts, you could hear little things in the door. People talk and all that kind of stuff. Other agents were here during that 13 days.
Tell me about that. What did you hear? Could you...
Well...
long time ago. You can tell us now.
Yeah, no, prior to that, we were getting prepared in the event of an evacuation. There was a place in West Virginia, Northern Virginia, that was practically, in those days, was considered atomic bomb proof. And they were setting up helicopters to pick up people in the White House in the event that the war had started, and take them out of the White House. So we were kind of getting prepared for that during those 13 days, talking about it, and some of the people that were pretty high up would talk to some of the other agents, and some of the other agents would get back. Jerry Blaine said that when they finally decided to stop the Russians and told Khrushchev that they weren't going to, that they were going to make a deal, they would take the missiles out of Turkey if he would take the missiles out of Cuba. And it wasn't really talked about. In fact, Kennedy, they weren't going to even tell the Americans that that's what they were doing. But they made a deal with Khrushchev that they were, but somewhere or other it came out so they could talk about it. But initially, he did that without, a couple of days before it came out, with Khrushchev, that, okay, we'll take out the missiles in Turkey if you do this with Cuba.
Did you know about it, or did any of the agents that you knew?
Yeah,
did they know about that?
I think so, yeah.
You guys knew about that and kept quiet?
I think so, yeah. And I'll tell you the reason. and this is what Jerry Blaine said, that Jerry and I were in the same shift. He said he could hear bustling of chairs, people getting up, clapping, and cheering. And Kennedy says something to the effect, well, might as well get ready for Palm Beach, Palm Beach. In other words, take the weekly trip that they hadn't done for 2 weeks. So it was kind of obvious that things had worked out okay. Prior to that, everybody was thinking this might be it, and all of a sudden people got happy, and everything was kind of getting back to where it was. So that's the closest.
Were you around during that period?
Sure.
Did you see the president during that period?
Sure.
Did he act differently? Did he seem to be under any kind of stress more than usual?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell me a little bit about it.
Well,
can you remember any certain incidents?
Yeah, well, I mean, he usually wasn't as friendly when he'd walk into the room, and also he had the cabinet and the wartime generals and all that kind of stuff all together. Practically every night they would go through whatever their decisions were. Khrushchev getting closer, his warships getting closer and closer, preparation to bomb Cuba, bomb the missile sites if they couldn't make a deal. And you know, those kind of things take a while. So you didn't know from day to day whether it was working out or not, until that last day when all of a sudden, you know, guys would come out kind of happy, and he'd be happy looking. So.
Were you scared?
Shit, yeah.
All the guys were scared?
I would think so. I had sent my wife and kids back to Chicago.
For that reason?
Sure.
Did any of you or your fellow agents discuss it? Did you talk a little bit? Well, I'm scared today. Do you think it's going to go off?
Well, I don't. That's a no-no to say you're scared. We never
even amongst yourselves.
We never use that word. We can be scared, but you don't say it. I mean, there's certain things you just don't talk about. But they guys talk about whether sending their family back and what the helicopters can only hold so many people. What do you do if somebody tries to get on and it's not listed? What if it's your own agent?
What would you have done?
You had no choice. You have to shoot them.
Would you have done it?
Shit, yeah. If it was that, or just staying there and dying, and everybody else dying with me, if the helicopter couldn't take off, yeah, I'm not that good of a guy. Yeah.
Any more incidents that you can think about? You know, in the movie 13 Days that they made a film out of, it's a very good book. I read it years ago. It was published after Robert Kennedy's death. Kenny O'Donnell, there's much made of Ken O'Donnell, probably because Kevin Costner has one of the main roles in this thing. And so one critic of the movie said everything is good, but there's a little too much Ken, meaning Ken O'Donnell, because that was the character that Kevin Costner was playing. Do you know about Ken O'Donnell? Did he really have a big role?
I never.
Did you ever see the movie 13 Days?
Yeah, I saw it. I don't really remember it. Let's face it. But I'm sure I saw it. But my opinion of Kennedy, there was what we call the Irish Mafia. It was O'Donnell, Powers, and I think one other guy. You might remember the name. And they had been with Kennedy from the get-go, and were from South Boston, Irish guys. Weren't real rich guys like
Dave Powers is the other fellow that you think.
I think
Dave Powers and Kenny O'Donnell.
And I think there was one other guy, but I can't think. I think there was three of them, but we'll stick with the two. I never get the impression that one had more power with Kennedy than the other. Dave Powers is more like kind of a fun guy, buddy guy, you know. Maybe Kenny O'Donnell was more serious, but that's where the personality was, I thought. But I don't remember anything that would show him as being higher up, and nobody ever talked about it. We treated them all the same because we knew that they carried a lot of weight with them, you know. When they would bring guests, you might say, to Kennedy, it usually was one of them.
Let's go back to, I want to talk to you about the fun side of President Kennedy. I know that there was a time when he stayed at Bing Crosby's house, and they had kind of a party. What made me think about that was when you were talking about Kenny O'Donnell and Dave Powers. I remember, I'm not sure where I read it from, but it might have been something that Kitty Kelly wrote or somebody like that, that they had this party and people were naked in the pool and jumping around, having a good time. And at one point, I think it was Dave Powers, or it could have been Kenny O'Donnell, I can't remember, that took some of Bing Crosby's suits and threw them in the pool.
I think it's somebody was.
Can't be Laura. She's got her own key.
Oh, okay.
Did you? My hedonistic side of me.
Sure.
This appeals to me. I mean, I'm not that buttoned down of a guy.
Yeah.
So,
no, of course not.
So the voyeur in me wants to know. Do you see any of that? Were you there?
Yeah. Not the one you're talking about. And not those guys, but with the English actor. What's the hell's his name?
Peter Lawford?
Yeah.
So tell me a little.
Well, I don't want you to use it. So.
Well, it doesn't matter. I won't use anything you don't want me to use. It goes back to you. I
gotta really trust you now.
I want it for the record. I like to have it for my own personal collection, but this will not go in the book. I just want to.
Okay. Lawford was kind of used as a
pimp.
Not so much a pimp, but kind of.
I mean, he liked girls too.
They tend to shit on him a little bit, you know, and he would drink a lot, and a lot of times they try to take off without him.
Do you think that that's why he drank? I love Peter Lawford in his movies. Do you think that's why he drank so much?
No,
part of the reason?
No, I think that's the way it is in the movies. I think you're talking about being hedonistic. I think if you are at a point where everything you and I, most guys, strive for is make a few bucks, get to the point where we could, have a choice of some beautiful broads and all that kind of stuff. You and I both like women, and get some prestige. Well, you get that in somebody like Kennedy, or you get that in the movies. So they have, women all over the place. Look at Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedy brothers.
Okay, let me stop you right there. We'll go back to Peter. But I have with Matthew Smith written a book on Marilyn Monroe. It has not been published yet, but hopefully it soon will be. There's been rumor that has been quoted as fact that Marilyn was snuck aboard Air Force One, or they had clandestine meetings. Do you know of any of that? Did that happen?
Sure.
You know that for a fact?
Not on Air Force One or anything like that, but she used to meet him at Lawford's house in California, right outside of L.A., Santa Monica. Yeah.
I've seen film of the house or pictures of the house. Did you witness it yourself?
Well, here's the thing: we witnessed the fact that he went there, and presumably he went there to see her. She was already in the house.
How do you know?
That's, well, I don't know. I don't know for, the assumption was that he went there for that reason.
Did you hear any of your buddies talk about it to where you could? I'm just trying to get it on the record.
Yeah, no.
I want something that's concrete.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I like the truth, whatever the truth is.
Yeah.
If Marilyn was never involved with him, I want to know that.
Yeah.
If Marilyn was involved with him for history, I want to know that. Good or bad.
Well, the only thing I can then say to you is that he used to go there when he'd go to L.A. We stood at the Beverly Hills. We stayed at the Beverly Hills. There would be a parade route almost with him and us and some press people. Every place he went, they had to follow. We would let him off on the grounds of Peter Lawford's, and then he would walk in, and we always heard that it was I don't know, I can't even tell you where I heard of him, that it was from, that it was to meet her. So, I mean...
Once, twice, 5 times, 10 times?
I wasn't on, see, it depending on what shift you were, if you were on a midnight shift, or you wouldn't be there. I'd say 2 or 3 times that I can remember.
Here's where how I think is like, I don't know a lot about the Secret Service or how it was really run. I have to go to you to tell me that. But in my head, it's like if I work with a bunch of guys, and I've had lots of jobs over the years, other than writing. If you have a group of guys that work together, if something happens, even low level or whatever, if you have a little group of guys, they tend to go, hey man, did you, if I was working in that, it would be, in my mind, it would be, man, did you see Monroe? She came in last night. The president spent 3 hours with her. He disappeared. And so that didn't seem to happen amongst you guys because you're so damn tight-lipped about everything.
Well, and it depends on the shift. In other words, if somebody's working an 8 to 4 shift, that she comes in then, and I'm in the 4 to 12 shift, chances are we won't, because it was so well known to us that was the reason he went there. Now,
so it wasn't just you that thought that.
Oh no, everybody thought that, sure.
What about, okay, this is another I was just at Marilyn's last house yesterday, and when you see things for yourself, it gives you a better perspective. It lets you touch the history of it a little bit. And that's what I'm about. That's what I always, to me, talking to you, sitting across this table, is the closest I'm ever going to get to touching the history of the Kennedy administration. So I went to Marilyn's old house just so that I could be in the area, so that I could get a little of the ambiance.
I've never been there, yeah.
And so, where was I going on this rant? I don't know. It went out of my head.
Well, okay.
I was pontificating so much that it went out the top of my head.
As far as I know, he never met her at her house, number one. We'd never gone to the house, never talked about the house. He wouldn't be that stupid. The neighbors and all over the place. Oh, look at that.
Pretty close. It's down a little alleyway, and the neighbors it's all there's a bunch of neighbors on either side.
But if he went to and met her at Lawford's,
right,
who would talk about
which is what I understand.
Sure.
I guess where I was going with this
now,
was...
what surprised me, though, William, and I never knew for sure, was his sister there. Peter Lawford married Kennedy's sister.
Yeah, well, apparently they were pretty close friends. The Kennedys apparently, from all I've read and people I've talked to, had kind of a European way of acting. It was like they knew about the daughters knew about their father's affairs, and
yeah. Well, let's see. I'm the old-fashioned, clean kind of American that I could never imagine anybody in my family saying, "Hey, Joe, would you cover for me?" So what? You're gonna be screwed around or something? That would, to me, would be horrible.
I had the
Just
straightest.
like what you're talking about. But I wouldn't kill my brother.
I
Never
had
again.
the straightest laced father you could possibly ever have, and mother and sisters. I'm the only boy, and I could tell you that that would never have entered the mind of either one of my parents, my siblings. As I got older, it might enter my head, but it would never enter any of them. I guess what made me get off on this was Bobby, the rumor that somehow Bobby became.
Yeah, and I heard that also as a rumor, but I could never attest to that.
Nobody ever. Nobody ever. None of your.
None of the Secret Service guys ever worked with Robert Kennedy. Anyhow, you know, just see him at the White House, and he was a pleasant guy. You always got the idea with Robert, though, he wasn't easygoing as his brother. So
that they called him ruthless.
we used to call him the Hammer.
Tell me why you used to call him the Hammer.
Because when Kennedy had a difficult time making a decision, if it was, you know, like the Bay of Pigs and that kind of stuff, he would talk to Robert about that, and he would listen to whatever Robert would say. And Robert was a lot more conservative than he was. So, you know, things that, you know, he might have, you're going along with, because he had both sides. He was you know, a combat sailor and a man's man, and loved the special forces. We used to go there all the time and see him.
So you saw some of that at Hickory Hill?
Sure.
There's been a book out called Ultimate Sacrifice. I don't know if you've read it.
I've heard of it.
By Lamar Waldron. And he said that, and it's been written in other places where Bobby would have some of these Cubans and some of these Green Beret people come over.
Now you're talking about Robert. Now I'm talking about JFK.
JFK himself loved
Yeah.
the Green Beret.
Sure.
Loved the mystery of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like most guys, like, you know, I think you got a kick out of maybe in the Marines and some of the other, you know, guys. He was, you know, he was, I always thought he was a man's man. You know, and so he was liked by other men, as far as you could, you know, just like you and I are talking, man to man kind of thing, you know. You could relate to it. And that's why when I hear you say some of the people really felt bad about him screwing around, well, I'll tell you something. The guys that you're talking about, they made him look like an angel because they did some screwing around.
You're talking about some of your fellow agents. So you think that's a little hypocritical on their part?
Hell yes.
Let me stop right there for just. Go ahead.
What do you want me to start?
Just you can point to the.
Okay, the other guys in the follow-up car, Art Godfrey, he was a shift leader, Sam Sullivan, me, Win Lawson, and Dave Grant.
Well, I appreciate you signing that for me.
This one has hardly any place to sign.
Why don't you sign it on his white cap there? That seems to be.
Okay. Okay, here we go.
You're gonna have your own wall.
Yeah, how about that? Okay, now this is even tougher.
You can just his tuxedo there.
That was a
Thanks,
quick
buddy.
one.
All right, that's great. My family will be very impressed with that.
Okay.
Okay, now, trying to get this. You
Now,
ready?
when you're going to be ready to leave about what time?
Oh, probably about 4.
Okay.
So, and I want you to get home to Mary. So, make sure we bend this enough to get your. There we go. Now let's see where you talked about the Secret Service agents not being angels and being somewhat hypocritical for blaming Kennedy for his.
Well, to the point where people would think that the agents didn't like him because of that, and that would not do what they were supposed to do in saving President Kennedy's life in the event that anybody tried to get to him. They might have thought that this wasn't really presidential to get himself in a situation where he could be could be harmed and could harm the country. But every agent I talked to, including any of those agents, loved him. And when he died or was killed, I think everybody then and even now, the ones that are still left, probably look at that as one of the worst things that ever happened in their life.
You have had opportunity over the years to talk to your fellow agents that are still here with us. Have they shared any kind of memories with you, how they feel, how they felt, and what it did to them over the years?
Well, this was something that I don't think a lot of guys like to talk about. You could see it more in their action than talking. Especially the agents that were with him. Paul Landis left the Secret Service shortly after his assassination. I'm trying to think. It really bothered Clint Hill to the point where he almost had a nervous breakdown.
Let's talk about Clint Hill for a minute.
Sure. I think go ahead. I think everybody was affected. Every agent was affected. More so the ones that were there, but even the other agents, because we thought that our reason to be had just disappeared.
And did you feel that way, that your reason to be had disappeared?
Yeah. We were supposed to protect the president, and however it happened, we all felt that perhaps we could have done more. I don't know what, but when you have something like that happen to somebody really close, whether it's somebody like Kennedy, somebody in your own family that dies suddenly, you always think that maybe there would have been something I could have done to save him from what did occur. So, like I said before, our mission in life was to protect him, and he died. That's what all I can say.
You were, after the assassination, I guess you were put in charge of watching the limousine in the White House garage?
Yeah,
Tell me
my
about
day Every month they take 3 agents from the White House to work at Atoka, which was in Northern Virginia, where she stayed most of the time, her and her children. So of course we needed protection there, but it would be 1 guard per shift. And that Saturday, the day he was killed, I was en route to Atoka. When I got to Atoka, I was informed by the administration to return to the White House garage. The car was being flown in, and there were 3 doctors who were going to take a look at what had happened, and if there was any brain tissue or bone tissue or anything of that nature, they were going to take it back to the hospital with them. So during my time waiting for the doctors to arrive, I walked around the limousine and noticed what appeared to me to be a bullet hole. I had heard that the shot came from the rear and from the book depository, and I didn't look to see if the glass fragments by the bullet hole were on the interior of the car, on the dashboard, or on the hood, which would have told me that either the bullet came from the front or from the rear. I never did see that. And then shortly after that, they came in. I was relieved, and the limousine, I understand, was taken away, and the windshield was taken out.
Well,
That was the last I heard of it.
This is some startling stuff, because I've heard other reports from people, but I've not heard it from a Secret Service agent, that there was, you in your mind feel that was a bullet hole. There have been some people that have said that it was a chip or a mark, but you're telling me that it was an actual bullet hole.
That's what it looked like to me, yeah. And there was other people, that woman, the doctor, I have never seen
Evangelist,
that.
I believe is her name.
Never seen that. I have to take a look at it. And there was supposedly a policeman who
Davis Ellis.
Yeah, and he even put a pencil in it, and you could tell it came from the knoll, whatever they call it.
Grassy knoll?
Grassy knoll, yeah.
Did you, and I know I'm asking you to go back an awful long way, but historically this is important, so maybe you won't remember, maybe you will. Do you remember there being blood on the back of the trunk lid? Was there blood everywhere?
There was blood everywhere, yeah.
It was pretty messy and gory.
Yeah.
There is a picture that I've seen recently. I've seen it before, but this was a close-up of a policeman, Dallas policeman, motorcycle officer, standing near the limousine while it's parked at Parkland with a bucket. I guess they were going to attempt to clean it, but you say it wasn't cleaned? No?
Unless it was really a hell of a lot worse. It couldn't have been much worse.
What did it feel like to know that the president had been killed, and he was your friend? I mean, as much as you can be a friend to the president of the United States, and you're looking at this mess. You weren't in Dallas that day, but you sure as hell had to guard the car. What does that do to somebody? Well,
number one, I think I was in kind of a state of shock, and emotionally drained, and I can't remember any feeling of utter grief and sorrow, and knowing that would never see him again, never be with him again. And I really wasn't looking forward to being with Johnson. So it was, you know, very, very bad, very dismal, bad feeling. And kind of a feeling of hatred, so to speak, with the supposed assassin at that time, Oswald. But that was about it.
You said, and I've never heard this story from anybody, but you said there were doctors that were coming to...
Three doctors, and I got to get the name. Hopefully, one of them was his main doctor, and you probably know his name.
Berkeley?
Yeah. Admiral Berkeley, I guess. Yeah.
Admiral Berkeley? Admiral Berkeley came to check out the car.
Mm-hmm. And two other guys.
And two other guys. Did they identify themselves as doctors? They did. Did they say where they were from?
Bethesda Naval Hospital.
So doctors from the Bethesda Naval Hospital, along with Kennedy's own personal physician, came to check out the car and take back bits of bone and other material.
Now, when they arrived, I left. And I'm trying to think whether they left before me or what. I think I left before them. So, I don't know what they took with them.
Did you watch them for any length of time? You were just there to get their names because basically you were the guy in charge that day at the garage.
Right.
And you remember distinctly that one of them said he was Berkeley, and the other two said they were from Bethesda Naval Hospital. That's amazing.
And showed me some identification, of course, but I can't remember. And it was done so quickly, and
was this like...
I wasn't even informed really what to do other than...
Was this as soon as the car got back?
Yeah, it was the same day, and it was, as I remember, it was still light out, so
it was right after the assassination happened. Okay, well, that's not in official history.
Now, what's official history say?
Well, it was taken to the garage, and it stayed there for some time, and then it was There's another story that it was taken directly and driven to Detroit, where the windshield was taken out of it. But if you had charge of the car, it couldn't have been taken immediately. Maybe it was a day or two afterward.
Yeah. All right, it could have been that day, really. I think I was there, maybe 2 hours altogether. By the time I got there, waiting for them, between an hour, 2 hours. And then I left. I figured my job was over, and I maybe should have stayed, but there was no relief or anything like that. No mention of relief, and there was a kind of a turmoil. I mean, nobody knew what the hell to do.
Did anybody take your place?
Mm-mm.
You left them alone in the garage?
That part, I don't remember if I left them alone or what. There was no reason for me to stay. I mean, I'm not going to watch them, and nobody's. Right. So I think I just left, and I think I did leave them alone.
Okay. Well, maybe we've gotten into this before, but you said you weren't particularly wanting to stay around for Johnson.
Yeah, and I don't want to put that in too much, but I'm just telling you.
We're just doing this for
okay.
What'd you think of
Johnson? No, I didn't like him.
Why didn't you like him?
The way he treated people. He was very rude, I think, and treated the Secret Service really, really bad. There were a lot of stories I heard about him, and And
Ever experience anything?
no, I never did myself. I wasn't with him that long. But he just was not very. Yeah, I guess after being with Kennedy, who was a very nice person and treated everybody equally, when you'd get somebody like him who seemed to treat the people that worked for him pretty lousy and was a real tough driving kind of a guy.
Today would have been John F. Kennedy's 100th birthday. Do you have any thoughts on his 100th birthday?
Nothing profound. It's just when I first heard his 100th birthday, I couldn't believe it, because in my mind there's a 48-year-old man that looked like he was a picture of health, and then all of a sudden turn around and see the 100-year-old guy. That's kind of sad, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm not that far from 90 myself, and so it really brings your mortality close to home, think about that kind of stuff. So I just, and of course you're always thinking what could have happened. I think he would have been a good president, and a lot of stuff that happened recently. I think the racial problems we had probably would have been taken care of before now. I mean, really, if he had been alive, he certainly wouldn't have been president. So probably wouldn't have been a hell of a lot different. He would have. I'm sure he would have made second. He would have been president for 4 more years. He probably would have been a president until about 1968. Whether he could have changed the world then or this country then 4 more years, I doubt it. So,
would you say that because of his death that the world changed irrevocably and set us on a pathway that we're still on?
Yeah. Even before he died, I think the 60s, and he kind of was the perfect president for the 60s, for the change in some respect in this country, the moral, everything kind of changed. Everything kind of reverted back to youth. When I was a kid, I couldn't wait till I got older and more mature and really was a man. Now there's such an emphasis on youth. I don't think the average guy wants to ever get old, or wants to be a youth forever. And I basically don't think that's a real good thing for the country.
All right.
You got to grow up someday, and when somebody had mentioned and called it Camelot, that was a beautiful way to. It seemed like Camelot now. Your idea of Camelot being a beautiful place to live, or a beautiful time to live. The world was becoming better and better, and the stage show Camelot, the song Camelot, the sexual revolution kind of came out. The pill, everything came out in the 60s. Drugs came out in the 60s. We lived the kind of a licentious life when the war in Vietnam. I think it was the first war at least in my lifetime, that the soldiers and Marines and sailors that fought in Vietnam were heckled and frowned on by the people that didn't go to war. There was parades and stuff where the people that would have, I remember going to some of those parades, you'd see him with a doll that looked like he had blood all over it, and really castigated our armed forces. There was a change, you know, World War II. I remember just before I went in, when I was 17 and 19, when the war was over in 1945, and I thought of our men, our servicemen, as the greatest men in the world. And we were the greatest country. And in those days, you had people like Jane Fonda, well-known actress that went to North Vietnam and heckled our people and made it look like we were the bad guys. And a lot of people in that, a lot of people that the young Americans kind of looked up to were anti-American. And I had a difficult time believing that. And I think it's a little bit now, even with Trump. You know, there's all kinds of people that hate Trump, and I don't think they'd like to be in the Secret Service now. I think, you know, you don't know where the enemy is anymore. Not just ISIS or across the ocean, right here.
This puts in mind this question, and will be the last one I ask. There are a lot of people that think Lyndon Johnson was involved in some way. You knew Lyndon Johnson better than I did. I didn't know him at all. Do you think Lyndon Johnson would be capable of murder?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much of a, I think a lot of people feel that way. As you know, there's a book that kind of felt that he may have had something to do with the Kennedy assassination.
But you said yeah pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, I've thought about it a long time. Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think so. And a good friend of mine, his girlfriend was a stewardess in the Lufthansa, and she told him that the headlines all kind of pointed to Johnson had Kennedy assassinated, something like that, headlines that didn't, you know, mince any words. That's what they believed. So.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop.